Welcome to the Lore Library, your weekly dive into the magical world of Disney Lorcana. I'm your host, Sarah, and before we dive into today's episode, it's action-packed. I have some exciting news in that it's going to make the Lore Library a little bit more magical, and that I have a new co-host here, and that is Annalise. So everybody, welcome Annalise. Round of applause.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
I've worked alongside Annalise at numerous events doing some Lorcana judging, so excited to have her along, and we're going to have some more judge-heavy content, so it's exciting. Really excited because I know you were kind of integral in making things run a lot smoother for some players, so they're probably familiar with you as well. So when they see your face,
Oh my
I'm
God.
excited for that.
Well, that's one of the most fun things about this is like the community getting to see familiar faces. We're like in cities all across the country, and it's like players. There's a player who would point at me and be like, "Oh, New York," and I'm like, "You remember? I haven't seen you in like months. That's so sweet." I love that aspect of this game.
I'm excited for the new DLC season whenever they announce it. Let's hope it's this year sometime. But anyway,
Yeah.
world, all that great stuff. But so we are going to do something kind of fun. Reign of Jafar is coming out. I know reveal season is coming shortly, so I'm excited to learn some new pieces from the lore and the story. But before we get there, I just wanted to take a look back and kind of summarize where we started all the way up through Arcasia's Island, so that we are ready for the story in Reign of Jafar. So just a little primer for up until the first, like up through the first chapter for this episode, and then every episode we're gonna dive a little deeper, going set by set. So this week, first chapter; next week, Floodborn. Best set. And so we're gonna start at the very beginning, at the Great Illuminary itself, right? Annalise, what fascinates you most about the Great Illuminary?
One of the things I was really thinking about when you told me we were going to dive into like the lore and go back to the first chapter was how this game really goes with that idea of like storytelling as like a theme. I feel like there's like the book imagery, the quill imagery, the ink. And for me, I love this idea that they've created a story for the game where the player is a part of that. Because I
Yeah.
think of like Disney itself as being something that has adapted so many classical fairy tales and fables and folklore. And it's almost like they've already like done this process. And now we as like the player have this story, have this world wherein like now we're doing that, right? We're like almost like the writers or the storytellers or the adventurers, right? And interacting with these characters that already exist somewhere, but a little bit differently than the ones that already exist.
I love that we have that kind of, like you said, ability to interact with the characters. And then that's when we see like those categories like Dreamborn versus Storyborn. So Storyborn is a category where it's just fresh off the page what you would think of Ariel in her mermaid or, can't speak with legs kind of form, what you expect to see exactly from the story. But now we have Dreamborn, and that's where an Illumineer can create this glimmer, and it is like a version that they would want to see something different than from the story, but something that you have like this creative control over. And then like building your deck, I always imagine like you're picking like and choosing which ones like you vibe with, so that's what drew me into like TCGs. I was like, ooh, I can pick all my characters together and how they synergize together. So it's been exciting. I was really excited to see, like, if you look on the cards now that we have like little pieces of the story, like if that has a little symbol with the quill, right? That means that like the people at Ravensburger that created the lore are creating these pieces. So like Pongo is an example, even though he's from set three, but he has like that little like symbol underneath what he has to say is like it looks like a little quill. It's because they quilled it, you know what I mean? And so if you'll see some of them where it has a book, that's because it's just like a quote, like directly from the story. And so it's been really fun to see, like look through and try to find those ones with the quill and go through the cards and like see what the story is and like what the quotes are that the people at Ravensburg are writing and making a part of the story, and kind of like developing these characters we've grown up with and really familiar with, but now we get like a more in-depth look at them, you know what I mean? And kind of like grow our love of the characters. And like you said, like having like the inks and stuff, because like for me, like you think about the Disney Cruise Line and the animator's palette, right, is this restaurant on the Disney Cruise Line where you get to like basically make everything, the stories come to life and like how you paint and how, you know, it's up to you, like what you want to do. And that's what I feel like we're doing is like it's up to us, like how we want to make these stories come to life. So we have Illumineers, right? And that's where we're the Illumineer. We're welcomed into the Great Illuminary. And basically, the Great Illuminary is this library in the sky in Lorcana. It's where all of the stories are held. It's harnessing the power of story stars and ink, magical ink, and things like that to create these glimmers. And that's, you know, the characters that we're using. And so in the Great Illuminary, we're getting called. We're a Lumineer. We get called. But the reason why that we know this story is because I kind of gave those story trailers in the beginning, and we see that Shanzi is an Illumineer, right? And so she's getting called over there. So there are these magical archivists. They have like extraordinary powers. They don't just collect the stories, they're kind of going to bring the stories to life. And the backstory is that the curator used to be in the Great Illuminary. And it was his job to kind of like protect all these stories. And he would create glimmers so that they would give him more in-depth information about the stories, and that was what the purpose was, but also to then go on quests to get lore, which then would 20 lore would make a story star, and the story star is what powers the Great Illuminary, and then that's what they harness when you're, you know, using your inkcaster. You're kind of like harnessing that power, right? So
And I love that,
the
like, all the things you're, like, mentioning and bringing up, like, some people might miss these things, but when you read, like, the flavor text or even as you mentioned, like, right between the actual, like, ability and, like, the quote or the little right, like, the flavor text at the bottom, there are little symbols there, like, there are things that are so, I think, purposeful, but also if you're, like, super into the game, you might miss, like, some of those, like, artistic choices that the, game designers made.
Yeah, because it's just like that's like how the Great Illuminary is operating, and they're giving you like all those little hints within like the little parts of the story, right? Or the little what the characters are saying to each other and you know, that kind of stuff. It's really I didn't realize it at first when I was first playing because I was so focused on like learning the mechanics of the game and things like that. And that's why I was missing it. And it wasn't until later that I started to like really pay more attention. The more and more you see the cards and the more you're like, oh yeah, now I am understanding like why on this card the specific like Mickey Mouse is holding like seaweed or something like that, right? Detective Mickey, and there's like ink and like kind of like what kind of looks like ink on the ground, and you're kind of you don't can't really figure out like what's going on there, but it's not until like later sets that you're like, oh, I get what's happening there, you know what I mean? The first go of it I really was like, oh, he's a detective and he must be you know, looking into something, but it didn't really like all click until like what much later when you kind of summarize all those little pieces together. So something that is fundamental are the glimmers and the story stars, right? Those are the two main components I feel like are of the story, especially what happens in the Great Illuminary. So, Annalise, would you explain what makes a glimmer so special?
Yeah, absolutely. A glimmer, I like to think of them like in terms of the game as like the characters, the items we add to our board. But in terms of the lore, right, it's something that we've summoned from the story to really be like a helper, like a tool on this quest, like you mentioned already. And really thinking about it as like you said, like this it being in this realm of Lorcana, right? As like what the realm is called. That they're gonna help us quest, they're gonna help us get the lore to power and like you said with the story stars. And I love the idea that there's like tools that we have, there's tools that the characters have, and like the I love the concept of the incaster. When you talk about the characters specifically, how they have their own like personality in that, I think that's great. And I love the idea that the Glimmers a new version. And you had just mentioned this, right? The Storyborn versus the Dreamborn versus the Floodborn, which I just think is amazing. I have some like specific cards I thought about to like shine a light on, but really like the connection between like ink and glimmer being that we create these glimmers with our Incasters, so we need actual ink, right? Just like we need pen on the paper to write stories, we are need our ink. It's needed to summon the glimmers, and all of our ink has different qualities. And this is where I feel like it's really fun, where we see the story kind of aligning with the idea of like deck building and meta in the game. Our inks having different qualities for like the characters, and then also having the different qualities in terms of like deck building and like staples of the deck and these different themes and tropes that we associate with each one. So I think that's really fun how they found ways like that the story can make sense in terms of our deck building and like leveraging things as if we are, right, these Illumineers going on a quest, and like that overlap I think is awesome. But the multiple versions of characters, that's what really got me excited about this game. I don't know about you, but the idea that we have Dreamborn and Floodborn as well, I thought was super exciting when I like first got into it.
Yeah, some of the Floodborn characters have been some of my very, very favorite characters. I think there's the Aladdin, right? That Floodborn Aladdin from the first chapter that is just like what you would imagine he'd be like if he was braver or like more, you know what I mean? Maybe if he had a different substantial upbringing with like more resources or something. I don't know. But the
Yeah, it reminds me of
Wayward
like the what
Sorcerer.
if.
Yeah, exactly. The Wayward Sorcerer Mickey, right? So there's Mickey Mouse, the Wayward Sorcerer, and he I had him next to me, but I lost him. Hold on. Let me see. Let's see if I can find it real quick. He his yeah. So Mickey Mouse, Wayward Sorcerer, he's Dreamborn, and he's a sorcerer, and he is the only Mickey Mouse that I could find that was not a hero. So he doesn't have like that hero, subcategory. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And he's like, if you look, he's got amethyst ink and he's like directing all the brooms to like take amethyst ink out of the luminary. Like he's got like a whole army of them. And so he doesn't say villain on there. He doesn't have villain subtext, but it's not a hero either. So it's like it's a way you wouldn't see Mickey Mouse normally, you know what I mean? And there's like endless possibilities there. And this idea of like that the inks kind of tie to their identity. So he's an amethyst ink. He's a wayward sorcerer. So he's like amethyst. That category seems to have like more of like the magical characters, people who have harnessed magical powers like Merlin and things like that. And I feel like when you're looking at the identities under like the sapphire ink, that kind of has been like the intellectual ink, and that's when we see like the more the inventor category. And so yeah, it's really fun to then take those pieces together and have like, well, if you're like resourceful, and then with the magical ink, that would be like a sapphire amethyst kind of. Then you see how that's like, oh, that's items and using a lot of action. So like it starts to like make sense of like why you're building with these different ink colors and like what types of, you know, mechanics that you're doing like actually do tie back to the characteristics of the characters.
I love the example of the sapphire with the inventors and then the items, right? Because when I was
Yeah.
like thinking about the first chapter, I had to think about Belle, you know? We
Yeah.
have the Belle Strange but Special Storyborn, which you see her with a book, right? In the spotlight, the traditional dress that we know from the movie. And it very much is like her and the her we know. And what I like about the Belle Inventive Engineer that's Dreamborn is that it's not as I feel like this idea of as exaggerated as Floodborn is. It's Dreamborn because her father's an inventor. So it's not that level of all the way over here. It's actually somewhere in the middle
Yeah.
where she could totally be an inventor as well, you know? And she's still a princess in that one as well, because it's still the essence of like her character and her setting and the story, but a little bit more aligned to like the ink itself which I think is fun. And I love that like the inventors are always tinkering with things that kind of are reminiscent of like the Great Illuminary.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like specific things, it's got like that kind of architecture or like vibe, which I think
Yeah.
is fun. And
Like,
then when it
even the
comes to
lucky
Floodborn,
dime is, like, encased in that
yes,
little thing and stuff, is it all looks like the Illuminary, yeah.
and I
I
like how
didn't
they
think
do that
about
with
that,
the
but it
art.
does, yeah.
Which it's like I love the inventive engineer, and I'm like, I'm not sure exactly what she's building, but it's giving Great Illuminary feelings.
Is it the unconventional tool? The one we have from our Acacia's Island? Is that what she's building?
Ooh, oh my god, it totally might be. Now
It just dawned on me.
I need to like look at the picture.
Side by side.
Ooh, difference.
It is different, okay.
Different. Oh my god, but the flavor test, the Maurice flavor text on there. So we know that it's probably like a gizmo or gadget they use to build things, right? Which again is the nice thing about the story itself. And with these two cards, this is literally like if anyone wants to see an example of like what Sarah was saying with the like book versus the quill, that like imagery right above the flavor text, you can look at the two sapphire bells from set one, and you see the book with our storyboard one where she's in her traditional princess dress and she's got a book, and then you see the like quill one more in the inventor one, in the Dreamborn one,
Cool.
which is awesome to notice.
I love it.
The last thing I thought I had to think about when I thought about Floodborn, one of my favorite cards from set one is Hades, King of Olympus. I kind of enjoyed that Hades almost seems in like his flavor text like surprised he's there. It reads like, oh hey, I'm gonna need new business cards. It's like he wasn't prepared for the flood either, which I know we'll talk more about next episode. But the Floodborn ones are always fun because there is, like we just said, that what if element almost.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that version of them is also kind of like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing, which is like cute to see, which I think is a lot of like fun.
To them and their extreme
Yeah.
with
Like,
their most extreme, yeah. Which I think that brings us to story stars, right? So story stars, I think, are something that's under discussed. Like we all know that we're questing for lore. But story stars is why we quest to 20 lore, and 20 lore equals a story star. And basically, a story star then is a pivotal moment in a Disney story. So they're kind of just actual fragments of like the actual story there, right? And so the reason why they are a part of the Illuminary empowering is because the curator is like amassing them to then use them to preserve Disney stories. And so edit that part out.
okay.
Yeah.
We're like,
So
pause.
yeah, right. Brain pause. Questing. We're getting lore. Story stars. So then we can harness the power of the story stars along with our inkcaster and the ink that's flowing there, and then that's how we're like producing a glimmer. And then so how do characters quest for lore, right? Like in a game mechanic when we have them out, like we put the card, like how do like you tell us more about questing.
Well, in the very concrete, that's our exerting, right? That's when we're turning our card. And I think like Ravensburger describes it as like that is your character going on their quest and they're getting their lore, exactly what's written on there, or again, if there's effects or anything that influences that. And this is where we also get to see like I think it's fun to see how different characters have different lore values in their different forms, their different versions, the balancing of like their abilities and their stats and everything. And you get to imagine a little bit that if they are a character like going on a quest, how have the game designers tried to balance out like what they would be able to do so that nothing's like too overpowered and it makes sense with like the story.
Yeah, so I picture so the way that it works. So you talked a little bit about Incasters and how they're customized. So let's say I'm Shanzi, right? And Shanzi's Incaster looks like a quill because her character is kind of like a writer and all of that, right? We have Martin, he has like a bass guitar one because he's a musician. So Shanzi, she's there, she's got the quill, she's a writer, she's, into amethyst ink and magical stuff. So she's gonna summon a glimmer, and so in order to do that, it takes ink that's flowing through her inkcaster. And so let's say she wants to have a character that's going to quest for one lore. Well, that's going to take one piece of, ink out of her ink caster is going to be the cost. But if she wants someone that's going to quest for three, well, that's going to cost five ink out of her ink caster. It's going to have more cost to it. And so then you can kind of like see them like at the, Grand Illuminary, the harnessing the ink, and like it's more difficult to harness more ink than a little bit, and that's why they get these ones that quest for more, and it starts to make it more concrete, and they can kind of like put that fantasy story into a concrete way of like how I'm actually putting the cards out when you're developing your deck and thinking about those things. Well, you'd be exhausted if everything costs five, right? That's not possible. So that's why you have to kind of like build up to that moment. And so it starts to like make a lot of sense when you think about that backstory, and you can kind of visualize being at the Grand Illuminary and harnessing the ink and getting the story stars. So now they're out there challenging. What's all that? Like, what are we doing with actions? Like, songs, like that kind of like starts to become like more concrete as well, right? You've created this glimmer of Ariel, and now you're having her sing a song. And is that song going to be, if she's Floodborn and can she sing differently? Like, that's when you start to think, well, yeah, it's because we've got Sonic Ariel, right? And she's got like a Sonic song. So, yeah, I mean, like, what's some interesting ones that you can think of?
I mean, I will say one of the first things I loved about this game was seeing like Ariel on human legs not being able to sing songs, because it's just
Yeah.
so that connection to the story of like, yeah, when that happens in the story, she loses her voice for that time. So that character can't sing songs. But even this whole mechanic, that's one of the big things that when I've like been teaching people coming from other trading card games this, I'll say like, oh well, you can sing it, and I have to explain what that means because it is such
Yeah.
a Disney themed wording for the mechanic, but I love it, right? And I really do love that our characters who often actually, not always, but our characters who, like in our Amber, where we have a lot of singers, those characters who do actually sing in their movies and have songs, we see that they get the singer buff, right? It may
Mhm.
be they only costed you 3 to put down, but they can actually sing songs that are worth 5 because it is like that lore of that's something that just goes with them. They sing, right?
They're
So then
known
they're
for
able
it, yeah.
to, yeah, they're able to like use those abilities in a way that other characters maybe can't, or that requires like more energy, like you said, for them to do it. And that's something that mechanic I really enjoy about this game. And it's just such the essence of Disney that you can just hardcast the songs, but the characters are singing them, right? That's something I really enjoy.
Just now realize why Vanessa version of Ursula can sing higher than an actual Ursula can, because she's singing with a stolen set of pipes.
And she's
Alright.
got it, it's glowing,
Yep.
right? Like in the card art.
Mhm.
That's
And
the
it
whole
makes
singing thing.
total
Oh my god,
sense.
so good.
I get it now. I thought it was clever too that the sequencing of the Amber Ruby decks, where you could put out a Mother Gothel with damage and then follow up with a
Yes.
Rapunzel and heal it to draw cards. I was like, that's exactly like the story. That's amazing. And then also throw Magic Flower in there. Oh man. You could, yeah. So, and that the whole Magic Flower is healing, and just like Rapunzel would. Yeah. Good stuff. I so that's when you're like, "Do I challenge or do I quest?" And then you're really thinking like, that would
Right,
be,
because you have your options, and that's where we see, like I think of, like, the Rapunzel card from I've got the DLC one right here. I was like, "Let me
Yeah,
have
you
the
do.
pretty version ready." The Gifted with Healing, where, she only deals 1 damage, like, naturally, because you see, like, this is a character who is really we have the healing ability, which goes along with the story, but it's not someone we would necessarily challenge with, which a little bit makes sense in terms of the story. She's a very resource heavy character. She gives us 2 lore on the card when she's questing, which I think is kind of goes along with this idea of them, the balance and how the story balances and then the mechanics of the actual game balance.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. Um,
But we love a good challenge. I feel like when we get into set 2, we'll have even, like, Shirkan and Madam Mim. There's even more fun challenges that are kind of, like, overlap in set 2.
and it is too, like, the characters that, like, yeah, Rapunzel's gonna, have one strength because she's been in a tower her whole life. She's not like super buff, but somebody like Hercules is gonna punch at you for a little bit more, right? So he's been training his whole life to do just that. So yeah, I love how they really do. Or like Pascal, he needs friends on board to be evasive, things like that. It's just very cute the way they
Mhm.
really did tie in the story and thought about how those things come together. So when we're playing Lorcana, we are the Illumineer. But there's some famous Illumineers that are alongside of us. They're on this quest with us. And that's Venturo, Shanzi, and Martin. When you're looking at their character design, they seem to embody two ink colors each, and that's why I think we have three. Because Martin has on his Inkcaster, you'll see he has the amber and the emerald ink symbols kind of thing. And then Venturo has kind of like an arm coil where he has the sapphire and ruby ink kind of colors. And then Shanzi's got hers have the steel and the amethyst colors. And so kind of each one of them are representing those two ink colors and why we're like having that kind of synergy between the two of them to build our decks and how they naturally synergize together. But I like that they put their personalities, these characters have like embody the personality traits of the different ink types. So Martin has emerald and he has amber. And we can see, like, as his character develops, we see that he is very supportive and healing and has those kind of like amber qualities along with the emerald kind of adventurous, get out there kind of stuff. And so I just like how they not only gave us the ability to be Illumineers, but also to have other kind of Lumineers that we can follow along with their story. And I don't want to give too much away, but Floodborn has a lot uh, of impact on Martin. So he'll need that support and that amber quality later to call on to for sure. So I feel like I really, even though I don't identify in terms of like those ink colors with the amber emerald like at all, like for what I play, that is got to be one of my more favorite Illumineers, just because their character design is so cute, and then I just think like they go through it. So I just love like a little underdog story. We're just like, oh, you've had trauma.
Yeah. And that's brought up even in the most recent set. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, oh, I feel for you. The empathy is there.
Yeah. I do love that I'm thinking about the first video that was dropped for the first chapter showing like Shanzi, right?
Yeah.
And it was like it looked like open mic night or like she was gonna be like reading a poem or something, but people
Think
weren't
it
really
was
paying
poetry, yeah.
attention. That was like the vibe, right? Where like someone's gonna stand up, they're gonna read poetry, but there's someone on their phone in the back. I love those little details, right? There's someone on the phone background, someone like falling asleep. And then she's just kind of like, you know what? I gotta get out of here. And where does she end up? But a place with all the power to like be creating and that like imagination. I like that like you're saying that tie in with some original characters specifically for the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that she didn't, like, fit in, but she kinda, like, found a place where she does fit in Lorcana, and that really is kinda what the community has been like for a lot of folks, and it really is a place where anyone can come and show up and play in however style that they like. There's a lot of social play, there's highly competitive play, and I think we're lucky that we have so many people in the space that love it so much and just kind of foster a really great environment. Lucky people. Turo, I love for his ruby sapphire is his kind
Of
of his
course.
archetype. So yeah, so he's kind of got that control ramp, right?
The
So like the way,
classic. The
yeah,
yeah.
the way he's out in the he's got the goods, he's trying to help everybody explore, and he's the one with like the tech and getting them through. And I love that he finds the lucky dime. So
Mm.
spoiler alert, but one of my favorite cards, so I like to associate him with that one. But
And I
yeah.
I love the character design as well. This is my bias. He seems like a New Yorker to me. Got the headphones, the sweater. It's like I could see him sitting on the subway. Like, all right, we gotta go here. We gotta do this. I do like the character design. Yeah, of all three of them. I love. I can't get over. I love the idea that their incasters are like personalized. It makes me think like, oh, what would my incaster look like? I can't just steal the quill, right? I'd have to think of something else.
And I very much want to know how they got their Incasters.
Mm.
Unless that's already been revealed and I miss it somehow, but I've been trying to figure out like does it
It's
just come to you? Does
interesting.
it appear? Do
I
you pull
know
it out of a
because
stone like
when
Excalibur?
I'm trying to remember the video because when she first goes to the Great Illuminary, it's kind of just there and she grabs it. So I do wonder if it is like it's made for you, like it knows
Mm-hmm.
you're coming and it, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Tinkerbell just tinkers it and drops it.
Which, when I was looking over the card art, hers is, it looks like it's in the great, some of the cards for set one, they're in the Great Illuminary, like Mickey
Mickey
Mouse,
Mouse,
the
true
true
friend.
friend.
Yep.
The Tinkerbell most helpful. Wait, I think you're onto something because that background definitely is the Great Illuminary in that card art. And literally, it's saying most helpful. Got her wand out. We see some pixie dust. Maybe that's what she's doing. She's making them some incasters. She's helping them get prepared.
I thought she had empowered all of the magic brooms, like our sassy broom, to clean up the
Ooh.
Illuminary. I thought that's what she was helpfully doing.
Oh, that's a good. I like that theory.
Yeah, I love sassy broom too, by the way. Like that's the best subtext
Understandable.
ever.
We
Yeah,
need the broom
right.
decks to come back more.
Mm. Yes, I thought we're puppies and brooms. Let's go.
But that and then this is what's fun where you can start tracking like the different brooms throughout the sets, the different hey heys throughout the set, the different where we have ones that are like kind of come up because they're I like how they do that with some of these supporting characters that they get a lot of these fun like we see them often, but in these
Yes,
different iterations is nice.
they are doing a lot of like bringing a lot of the unsung heroes of movies back into people's memories. Great Mouse Detective, Atlantis, Treasure Planet. I've heard people be like, I just watched this again just because I had to know like what this card is from, right? So I'm excited for the more love Treasure Planet can get, the better. And then we'll get more morph cards, and the more morph cards we can get, the
Oh
better.
my god. I love Morph. What a good card.
He's so good. I love ET and I love Morph. I don't know. I think they're really cute. And then people tell me those are ugly characters. And I don't know what's
What?
wrong with me, but I don't know. A
It's just
triangle
the
face with big eyes, and I'm in.
beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
They're adorable. I think they're quite cute.
The Morph Enchanted is so adorable.
It's
We're gonna have
so
fun talking
good.
about Morph
My gosh. It
when
is
we get
literally
to
my
set
favorite
3. Oh
card.
my
It
god.
is my very favorite card. I'm excited that right now in the meta, Morph is getting a glow up because we're very much seeing a lot more like discard decks and stuff that are using Morph as a shift target. And I couldn't be happier for any excuse to have to invest into a playset of Morph and chances to play. So it's my favorite
Exactly.
card art. It's just my entire essence is his little like carefree little, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I can't even.
Morph won me a Stitch card, so I
Yay.
love him now. We're in it. We're in it. We're in it together now.
Yeah.
Back in set 3, I was
And
like, I just love this card,
I want to just
which
be
is awesome.
wild and crazy and just have Morph and then Universal Shift on top of Morph for no reason.
Hey, the colors work out, so maybe they wanted you
Yeah.
to do that,
I'm like
right? So
I'm like Baymax Universal Shift. Like no reason. For the memes. But yeah, I love that as we look through all of first chapter, and I've been revisiting first chapter, I've been opening Japanese first chapter, which has been a hoot. But looking at the card art, there's definitely foreshadowing too, right? We see like foreshadowing of stuff that's coming up. We do have Floodborn characters. That is a category, and those are characters that we have. We talked about Aladdin. There's some other ones, but there's definitely, when you look in the background of the card art, there's some little foreshadowing, right? I think there's like some flavor text, and you talk about like rising tides, and then there's this stuff about like the detective Mickey Mouse. I love that card, so I'm going to bring up anytime I can. But I love that, yeah, there's like, little ink flood droplets everywhere and the word floodborn. And so you're like, that this is coming, right? There's some foreshadowing there. Did you find any indications of the flood?
The water ones are so good once you see them, because when it first came out versus like us having the hindsight of like my mind is totally blank. Can you remind me? The Ursula game is called
Illuminer's
um
Quest.
the Illumineers quest. Thank you. Oh my god.
I was
That's
trying to think of
where
the
we get to
subtext of it.
see all these things like coming together. But let me think about specific ones, because you had mentioned, yeah, the Mickey Mouse detective, such a good one, where it's so subtle. And there we go.
He's
That one
walking
is
through there.
used in it. We've got the nice like mist at the bottom.
They're
They're
cleaning
cleaning
something.
up.
Or these are the ones coming. So he's directing them. And they're all in the background. They're all lined up here.
I do
And then
like the
this
idea,
is
like
them
maybe he's
close
not a
up.
hero because he's staying there in the Illuminary helping. So he's not kind of going on a big grand quest.
Yeah.
He's maybe just helping out.
Mickey. I hope. I hope. Yeah, Dr. Facilier. I don't know. He's got the background of the Illuminary. And then
I think they need more. We need like we need him more in the meta, because I actually do love his cards, but we don't see him in action much, which kind
right?
of makes me sad.
He'll have his day to shine one day. Yeah. Looking
Although
through
friends
my
on the other
cards.
side, there is that. I know, I'm looking through some more now. I get
Chapter
so wrapped up
1.
in just how beautiful the art is.
These are chapter 4. It's like going back in time. Thank goodness for editing. All these
For
are all
what?
the for editing.
Our little wait time, yeah. I'm like looking. I thought Genie on the job looks like he's also in the Great Illuminary, but
Yeah, he is. Yeah, for real.
yeah,
100%.
with the green ink around. And we also see like that beginning of the style with like the swirls of the ink color around them.
Dancing.
I know, sometimes I feel it's kind of like the hidden Mickeys, like you blink and you can miss it. Our guy.
Just looking at all my
And
miscellaneous.
I'll be honest, sometimes I have to remind myself whether a card is from set 1 or set 2, just because they're been around for a while now. And I'm like, oh, I remember like an Anna card, and I'm like, no, but I think that's
No,
not set 1. That's not.
Tamatoa is from Sep. He is definitely in some water. If you ever wanted to know what
That's what I mean.
Japanese
Yeah,
Tamatoa look like.
love it. I only was able to get my hand on some Floodborn. I did not get any first chapter. Wah, wah.
You got Japanese
That's
Floodborn, that's cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
A classic. The fishbone quill.
I miss it. It's been upgraded.
This one has the book icon. If you want to cross the bridge, my sweet, you've got to pay the toll. Yep, that's exactly what it says in the movie. They're not lying when they put that book. Not me, sadly, looking through the guts of my blue steel deck. Like, oh, what could have been?
They did that quick too. They were like, no.
So sad. Be prepared. Baby Tamatoa, such a good card.
Wrapped in the seaweed? Yeah, I do love that.
Someday I'll grow up to be the most crabulous crustacean the world has ever seen. I love that
Yes,
for
you
him.
will.
I love that for him. Yeah, I think one of the most notable ones is that Detective Mickey. He's definitely looking into a flood of sorts.
Yeah, I think once we got like set 3, it really did change like going back and being able to see things that before maybe it didn't seem like one story, but now we go back and we're like, okay, some of these people are leading up to like a larger like arc.
Yeah.
I like the pun on the Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. He always goes for the clean sweep. They're cleaning up, but he's also he's ready for battle if he needs to be.
So good, man. Okay. So, I mean, I feel like when we talk about Floodborn, right, and we're just kind of theorizing, well, I'll wait on that until we actually talk about Floodborn next time. So I'll talk about like why the characters are like so extra. You know what I mean? They're just like
Yeah.
soaked in ink.
Look, Rockstar Stitch, classic.
Yeah. I always think of the Cinderella, and I think she's next set. That's why
Yes,
it's the stout, and then we'll be able to show off our
cash
DLC
in.
Cinderella.
Absolutely.
That's why I was like, "Ooh, I'll just wait," because she is Floodborn, but like from next set. So, all right, how can I transition here? Yeah, so there is a lot more in depth that you can get if you're waiting for some DLC announcements, and you're just like, well, how can I get more extra with my Lorcana hobby? Definitely be looking into the background of the illustrations and reading the flavor text at the bottom, and especially if you see that like little quill symbol, you know that that's stuff that they wrote especially to kind of pull you through the story, and then I definitely pay extra attention to that. I love that just like anything where they're creating that story, like you said, like kind of adding to our love of the Disney lore through the lore of this game and being able to kind of extend that. And I love to see like where these characters are going, these characters that we've seen in like a classic sense, and like who they're going to be imagined as for sets coming up, characters we haven't seen yet that we're going to see later. I'm excited. So lots of excitement. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm also excited for Disneyland's 70th anniversary is coming up.
Ooh.
So, yeah, in July 17th is Disneyland's birthday. It'll be its 70th anniversary, but coming up
Wow.
in May 16th is when Disneyland kicks off its celebrations in the park. So I recommend if you're going to the park in the next couple months, it's a good time before big crowds come and kind of have some springtime magic. The pink trees are in bloom. You can kind of sit over at Jolly Holiday, grab some games, open some packs, and Lorcana in the park, my favorite thing ever. I definitely am excited once we hear about Worlds information, hopefully soon. And if we'll have some people playing in the Disney World park. So we'll do some information there about some tips and tricks on playing Lorcana over there, where to get some packs, and if anyone's traveling out that way. But
Just
this
so
wraps up.
exciting. What a good excuse.
God, yeah, like I'll have
Sorry.
an excuse. Any excuse. Yeah, no, don't be sorry. We need any excuse to open packs or go to the parks. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. I'm excited. I'm putting together a thematic tournament that kind of goes along with the Disneyland's anniversary. So, kind of like people building decks based on attractions that were open in the park when it opened. Based on attractions that were in the park when the park opened. Opening day
Awesome.
attractions like Snow White, stuff like that. So that wraps up today's deep dive into the foundations of Lorcana. Next week, Annalise and I will be exploring the fascinating connections between these hints in the Floodborn set in detail. And until then, keep questing. So this is Sarah
And Annalise
from
from
the
the
Lore
Lord.
Library.